Imagine a dense and suffocating jungle in the heart of Mesoamerica. The year is 700 AD. The Mayan Empire is at the absolute peak of its power. Monumental cities rise among the trees like dreams made of stone, pyramids that touch the clouds. A people who deciphered the secrets of the cosmos millennia before anyone else. Priests in white robes perform rituals to the sound of drums that echo throughout the forest. 100,000 warriors guard every sacred border of the empire. Suddenly, the sky tears open with an impossible mechanical roar. 3 helicopters from an unknown future descend like steel serpents between the treetops. The crowd of Mayan warriors freezes in absolute terror. The gods are coming, but they are not gods. They are something this world has never seen before. The helicopters unload 100 figures onto the sacred ground. Gladiators from the 2nd century of the Roman Empire, transported by the twisted hand of fate into this impossible mission. The rotors spin one last time and vanish into the green horizon. No reinforcements, no explanations, no time travel paradoxes, just pure total war. The mission is to conquer the Mayan Empire in exactly 100 days. Comment now. Do you believe 100 gladiators could truly defeat the most advanced civilization in the Americas? Because what I am about to reveal will shock you about the true power of arena training versus an empire of sacred warriors of the forest. The 100 gladiators slam the earthen ground with a deafening crash. Their appearance alone paralyzes the Mayan warriors. They are men of iron and scars. Each of them has survived at least 10 arena fights. They have watched partners die at their side. They have killed men who begged for mercy, while the crowd roared for blood. They were trained to ignore pain, ignore fear, ignore any instinct that was not to kill and survive. They are not ordinary soldiers. They are human machines of destruction. They are not a homogeneous group. They are a deliberately diversified force composed of the most lethal types of gladiators ever trained on the sands of Rome. 30 are Myrmilions, the backbone of the force, armed with the short-bladed gladius and the scutum, the enormous rectangular shield that functions as a battering ram. 20 are Rhecians, more agile, specialized in combat with a smaller shield and a long sword, perfect for the uneven and suffocating terrain of the closed tropical jungle. 15 are Thracians, carrying the sica, a curved sword capable of bypassing shields and striking backs and flanks in movements impossible for any straight blade ever known. 10 are Sagittarius, archers with composite bows that fire at 350 meters with deadly precision. Every arrow finds a throat or an eye, without exception. The remaining 25 are Provocators, the most heavily protected gladiators in Rome. A cast-iron breastplate capable of absorbing impacts that would kill any other warrior. The supply drop crashes down beside them. 5,000 additional arrows, 100 Roman throwing spears designed to bend on impact and render enemy shields useless. 30 jars of concentrated olive oil with tow for primitive but devastating fire. Iron tools for building palisades and traps in the forest around the camp. But the true arsenal is not material. It is the mind of each of these men, forged over years of combat before crowds that demanded perfection or death. Comment below right now. Would this arsenal be enough to face an entire empire? Because the enemy they encounter makes Rome look like a simple fishing village? The Mayan Empire is not just a kingdom. It is a web of interconnected city-states covering more than 300,000 square kilometers with more than 2 million inhabitants. They built astronomical observatories with precision that would challenge modern engineers. They created a sophisticated writing system and a calendar more accurate than any European calendar of the era. But what matters here is their war machine. The Mayan army that leader Marco Valerius spots around him is not a band of disorganized tribals. They are sacred warriors trained from childhood for a single purpose: to capture enemies for the ritual sacrifice of the gods. That goal makes every battle a matter of divine honor. The elite warriors are the Balaam, The Jaguar Warriors. They wear real jaguar pelts over quilted cotton armor with up to 5 compressed layers of fabric. That armor is capable of absorbing arrow impacts and deflecting obsidian blows. Their helmets are real jaguar skulls. Each one is a work of art forged for war. Every balam carries the macuahuitl, a weapon unique in the world. A hardwood club with obsidian blades embedded along the sides, capable of severing a limb in a single blow. The obsidian edge on that weapon is sharper than any Roman steel. A well-placed blow from the macuahuitl can split a helmet in half, along with the skull inside it. The numbers are overwhelming. In the area around Tikal, the largest Mayan city-state in the region, there are 80,000 warriors available to enter combat immediately. 10,000 are elite balam warriors trained for decades. 20,000 are warriors with extensive battle experience. The rest are archers with paralyzing poison blowguns. The Mayan tactical advantages are even more terrifying than the numbers. They know every meter of the jungle, every swamp, every natural trap hidden among the roots. They communicate by drums that transmit messages 30 kilometers away in minutes. They have spy networks in every village of the empire. They can assemble entire armies within hours. Comment below. Knowing these impossible odds, would you accept this mission? Because your answer reveals whether you have gladiatorial courage or the caution of an ordinary man. The moment the 100 gladiators touch the sacred ground, chaos erupts. The thousands of Mayan warriors fall back in confusion before the iron birds and the men of metal. 300 balam warriors advance in formation to capture these strange invaders. Capture, not kill. Prisoners are more valuable than corpses for the ritual sacrifice of the gods. That initial tactical mistake is going to cost them dearly, very dearly, because these 100 men were not trained to be captured. They were trained for one single thing: to win. Marco Valerius, the veteran Myrmilio with 18 years in the arena, assesses the situation in seconds. He has spent his entire life facing bigger, faster, more exotic opponents. He shouts in Latin with the voice of someone who has commanded men into death. Testudo, tortoise formation, and the 100 respond like a single organism made of iron. The shields close on all sides like a wall of wood and iron. Spears emerge between the gaps. The archers fire overhead in calculated arcs. The balam warriors collide with the testudo like waves against a cliff. The macuahuitl are devastating against an isolated opponent, but against a wall of shields, they find no flesh. Every warrior who tries to climb the formation finds a gladius between his ribs. In 7 minutes, 140 Mayan warriors fall. 0 gladiators dead, 4 with minor wounds. Marco orders an immediate advance before the enemy can reorganize. The gladiators move forward like a war machine, every step coordinated, every blow calculated for energy efficiency. But Marco knows what this victory means. They have revealed their position. Within hours, the entire drum network of Tikal will know there are 100 iron warriors in the forest. The gladiators dissolve into the green jungle. We regroup at sunset on the northern hill. No more battles today. Today, we plant the fear. Tomorrow, we harvest the chaos. The gladiators abandon any pretense of open confrontation and split into 10 groups of 10, spreading through the jungle like ghosts the forest cannot find. The strategy is devastating in its simplicity. There is no front line. There is no territory to defend. There is only death coming from any direction at any hour of the day. Group 1, led by Marco, attacks Tikal's water supply system. The city depends on artificial reservoirs called aguadas, the most sophisticated hydraulic engineering in the Americas. The gladiators poison 2 smaller reservoirs with animal carcasses, forcing the army to redistribute the entire logistics of drinking water for a city of 100,000 people. Group 2 takes elevated positions on the smaller pyramids at the city's edges. They fire and relocate before any hunter can track them. 3 days. 60 Mayan officials dead. The officials were identified by their elaborate feathered ornaments and jade necklaces. Without leadership, the combat units collapse in coordination and tactical communication. Group 3 sabotages the communication routes. The Mayan drums depend on specific posts at high points in the forest. The gladiators eliminate the drummers in silent nighttime attacks. The gaps in the communication network confuse the Mayan generals trying to coordinate the response to the attack. Entire armies stand still, waiting for orders that never come through the silence. Group 4 does something more subtle and more devastating than any weapon. They capture young Mayan warriors alive and release them carrying a specific message to the people. The sons of the thunder god cannot be killed. Every warrior who attacks us will fall. Surrender the city, and you will live in peace. Terror propaganda is worth more than 1,000 arrows. By the third day, Tikal is in panic. The civilian population begins to evacuate. Merchants close their businesses. Priests order fasts and prayers to appease the furious gods. The Serpent King of Tikal calls his generals into emergency session. These invaders cannot be captured with normal tactics. We need a perfect and irresistible trap. The Mayan generals are men of exceptional intelligence. They realize what the gladiators want, to capture the king. So they build the perfect trap around that very ambition. They announce that the Serpent King will perform a sacrifice ceremony at the top of the Great Pyramid of Tikal, Temple 1, which rises 47 meters above the forest. It is bait. It is obviously bait. The gladiators know that, but Marco realizes something crucial that changes the entire calculation of the situation irreversibly and definitively. If he captures the Serpent King, the fractured political structure of the Mayan city-states will collapse immediately. Each city obeys its own king. Without Tikal, the coalition crumbled. Marco gathers all 100 gladiators together for the first time since the first day. "Brothers," he says, with the calm voice of someone who has already accepted death as a constant companion. "We have survived 7 days against an empire. We have killed more than 600 warriors and lost only 2. Gaius fell into a swamp. Hercules died of infection. 2 out of 100 gone. But our arrows are at 55%. Our food runs out in 10 days. There is only one possible way out of this jungle, the head of the dragon." The plan is equally surgical and insane. 20 gladiators disguise themselves as merchants from distant regions and infiltrate the ceremony crowd with weapons hidden under their clothing. The other 80 position themselves in a circle around the pyramid with bows and spears. When the signal comes, they create a corridor of death that no army can close. The ceremony begins at noon. The Serpent King, wearing an elaborate costume of quetzal feathers and jade, ascends the stone steps of the circular altar at the top of the pyramid. 5,000 warriors form a human wall around him. Drums thunder. The king begins his ritual prayers to the rain god. The sun burns. The jungle watches in silence. Marco, concealed in the crowd with a stolen shawl, gives the signal. An owl call that echoes across the temple ground, and the most calculated chaos in history begins. The 80 gladiator archers fire simultaneously. 80 arrows fly in perfect arcs, aimed at the specific officials Marco identified as critical points in the defensive formation. 60 warriors fall with arrows in their throats and eyes. The formation falters for 3 crucial seconds. That is all the 20 infiltrators need to act with deadly precision. The 20 disguised gladiators tear off their shawls, revealing chainmail and weapons. They charge up the stairs in boar's head formation. Every step takes down a different defender. The king's bodyguards are elite warriors, sworn to die protecting him. They face the gladiators in desperate hand-to-hand combat on one of the most sacred places in the Mayan world. Here, the gladiatorial superiority in close combat becomes clear. Each of these 20 men has spent decades in the arena, killing opponents in spaces smaller than a stone room. In 90 seconds of brutal combat, 70 guards lie dead or dying on the blood-stained steps of the Great Pyramid. The gladiators reach the king at the top altar. Marco grabs the Serpent King by the throat with one hand. The gladius in his other fist touches the neck of the most powerful man in the Americas. The Mayan warriors freeze. A translator captured days earlier shouts the message in the Mayan tongue, "Order your warriors to fall back, or this sacred temple will be painted with the Serpent King's blood today." The king, shocked but maintaining his imperial dignity, slowly raises his hand. The warriors freeze. The gladiators bind the king's hands and drag him back down the stairs with them. The 80 archers create a corridor of death. Any warrior who advances dies with an arrow in the face. The gladiators extract themselves with their prisoner and vanish into the jungle. Comment if you are shocked that this plan actually worked, because the next 30 days will determine whether this victory becomes conquest or total catastrophe. The gladiators keep the Serpent King in an abandoned smaller temple on the edges of the forest, transformed into a fortress with wooden palisades and traps around the perimeter. Marco interrogates the king through a captured translator. "Serpent King, your situation is clear. Your warriors could not protect you. Your pyramids did not stop us. Your army of 80,000 did not find us. 100 gladiators made your empire look weak for 7 straight days. Now you negotiate with us, or we kill you and let the Mayan Empire tear itself apart in succession wars." The Serpent King, even as a captive, maintains the composure of someone who has governed for decades. "You are skilled warriors," he says, "but you cannot hold Tikal. You cannot govern 2 million people. What exactly do you want?" Marco looks directly into the eyes of the most powerful man in the Americas and answers with the clarity of someone who has nothing to lose. "We want 3 things. First, complete safe passage to reach the Atlantic coast in total safety. Second, a cargo of gold, jade, and cacao, enough to buy a city in Rome. Third, that you send messengers to all allied city-states, ordering them to allow our passage freely. Do this, and you return to your throne intact and with your honor preserved." The king considers in silence. He knows Marco is right about the succession wars. If he dies now, 4 sons will fight for the throne, and the empire will bleed for decades. But he also knows that 100 men cannot govern 2 million. Even if they win every battle, they will never have enough people to administer a single neighborhood of Tikal alone. "Counteroffer," says the Serpent King. "I will give you the gold and the jade. I will give you guides to the coast and canoes for the sea. But I will not order my army to formally surrender. That would be suicide for both of us. My generals would rebel against such an order. They would kill you, kill me, and seize power. Be practical. Take the wealth and the glory you have earned. You have already conquered the impossible. 100 men humiliated the Mayan Empire for 7 days. That story will echo for centuries. Take it and live to tell it. That is worth more than any gold." Marco looks at his fellow gladiators. They are far from Rome for an indefinite time, transported by means they do not understand, with no way home except through the cooperation of the captured king. They have jade and gold enough to make every gladiator wealthy for the rest of his life, and they have the greatest story ever told. 100 gladiators brought the Mayan king to his knees. "Agreed," says Marco, "but know this. You stay with us until we are in the canoes on the sea. If your generals attack during the march, you die first. Every step, every hour. Understood?" Over the next 20 days, an agreement is formalized. The gladiators escort the king to the river port of Yachilan. Mayan officials provide a cargo of riches, guides, and ocean canoes. Upon boarding, the king will be freed. But not everyone in the empire wants this deal. Radical generals see the capture of the king as proof of weakness that demands a response in blood. The gladiators begin the 200-kilometer march to the coast through hostile territory. They travel in closed formation with the Serpent King, at the center protected by shields all around. Along the route, accidents occur. Bridges mysteriously collapse just before the gladiators cross. Arrows from unknown snipers fly from the forest shadows in nightly ambushes of increasing frequency. Clearly, some Mayan factions are trying to kill the gladiators and blame it on bandits. The gladiators respond with calculated and proportional violence. Every ambush results in 20 Mayans dead for every arrow fired. Every trap discovered results in a warning burned into wood left on the road. The message is clear for any warrior who can read it. You attack us, and innocents die. Mayan civilians, caught between the brutality of the gladiators and the recklessness of their own radical generals, begin pressuring the leaders. Free the king. We want peace, enough blood. By the 50th day, the gladiators reach the coast. Mayan war canoes crowd the bay but do not attack. The Serpent King still breathes. The threat is still real and present. The cargo of gold, jade, and cacao is transferred to the large prepared canoes, enough to buy entire properties in Rome, a fortune none of them ever dared to dream of having. The gladiators board with weapons in hand, expecting betrayal at any second. The Serpent King is the last to be freed. Marco cuts his bindings at the stone pier. The king rubs his wrists and looks at Marco with something that, in another context, might be called respect. You are an extraordinary warrior, he says in his tongue. The translator conveys it. Marco answers, 100 gladiators bend your empire not with armies, but with courage and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Remember this day every time you strengthen your defenses. The Serpent King, with the dignity of someone who has governed for decades, responds, You are not my equals, gladiator. You are my superiors in combat. I acknowledge that, but you will never govern. Warriors conquer. Wise men build. Take your gold and your story. You have earned both with merit. The canoes pull away. The gladiators roar victory chants that echo across the bay and sink deep into the green jungle. Comment below, do you think this was victory or just survival? Because the answer depends on how you define conquest, and that definition reveals everything about who you are. Now, let me show you the 3 possible endings of this story, depending on specific decisions made during the 50-day campaign in the conquered Mayan Empire jungle. First ending, the legendary return. 60% probability. The gladiators sail back to the Mediterranean with their treasure and their tale. They arrive in Rome as heroes of mythical proportion. They are received by the emperor as proof that the Roman spirit is invincible anywhere in the known or unknown world. Musicians compose epics about the 100 who bent the new world. The story spreads across all of Europe. Exploration expeditions grow bolder in their ambition, inspired by proof that no people is unconquerable. Rome begins looking toward the Western Ocean. In Tikal, the Serpent King fortifies the defenses and creates specialized units trained in closed formation tactics, inspired by what he observed from the gladiator. Both civilizations grow stronger. Second ending, the diplomatic revolution. 25% probability. The gladiators, impressed by the Mayan sophistication, do not return to Rome. Instead, they negotiate permanent settlement in distant territory. They become military advisors to smaller city-states, teaching Roman tactics in exchange for land and political recognition. Over generations, the military knowledge of Rome fuses with the jungle. Third ending, the tragic betrayal. 15% probability. As the canoes pull away from the coast, Mayan war vessels pursue them under secret orders from uncompromising radical generals. A naval battle breaks out 100 kilometers from the coast. The gladiators fight with absolute ferocity, but are outnumbered 10 to 1 at sea, where their terrestrial superiority does not exist. The 100 gladiators die, taking 500 Mayan warriors with them. The gold sinks to the bottom of the ocean. The Serpent King, upon learning of the betrayal, personally executes the responsible general. The story survives only in Mayan military record, classified as dangerous information that could inspire future invasions from unknown peoples coming from the east across the great ocean. Tell us in the comments which ending you think is most likely based on human nature and the historical patterns of how empires treat those who humiliate them publicly and survive. Throughout this 50-day campaign, 6 critical choices determined whether the gladiators would reach legendary victory or tragic death. Let me reveal each one of them now. First decision: attack or negotiate on day 1. The gladiators could have tried diplomacy. Instead, they attacked immediately, establishing total psychological dominance through calculated and efficient violence. That choice set the tone for the entire conflict. But it also made any peaceful resolution impossible afterward. Diplomacy was dead before a single word was exchanged between the two sides. Second decision: asymmetric terror versus honorable warfare. The gladiators chose to poison reservoirs, eliminate communications, and assassinate officials, effective tactic that created permanent enemies throughout the empire. Alternative: had they fought only military targets and spared civilians, they might have won popular support. But would that have been enough to compensate for the numerical disadvantage of 100 against 80,000? Third decision: capture or kill the Serpent King. Keeping him alive as leverage was the correct strategic choice. Dead, he would have united the entire empire in an endless vendetta with no possibility of negotiation. Fourth decision: accept the deal or demand total surrender. Had they demanded that the Mayan Empire submit to Roman rule, they would have been massacred. Taking the realistic deal was wisdom, not weakness. Fifth decision: calculated violence or total reprisal. The gladiators used force only in response to actual attacks during the march. That restraint kept the civilian population neutral and the agreement alive. Sixth decision: leave or stay in Tikal. Leaving with honor and treasure was the correct way. Staying would have required generations of warfare to sustain any control over a people of millions. Comment which of these 6 decisions you think was most critical for the gladiators' survival, because each one has a direct parallel in decisions you face in your own life today. Now, let me translate the gladiatorial tactics into wisdom you can use in the impossible battles of your modern life. Because this is not just an ancient war story. First lesson: when you are outnumbered, strike first, and with everything you have. The gladiators did not wait to be attacked. The first aggressive move always sets the tone of every future conflict. In your modern challenges, whether business competition, legal disputes, or personal obstacles, passivity invites exploitation. Calculated aggression demands respect. Acting first is almost always better than waiting. Second lesson: asymmetric warfare beats direct confrontation every time. The gladiators knew they could not face 80,000 head-on, so they changed the rules to a game where 100 could win. When you face a stronger opponent, competing on their terms guarantees defeat. Find where you are strong and they are weak. Force them to fight your battle, not theirs. Third lesson: capture the head and the body follows. By capturing the Serpent King, the gladiators avoided having to defeat an army of 80,000 warriors, one combatant at a time in the forest. In your work, in your life, identify the critical pressure point of any system. In business, it is the key decision makers. In organizations, it is the influential leaders. Always attack the head. Fourth lesson: every resource is finite, even courage. The gladiators tracked their arrows, their fire, their food. They knew that even the most absolute courage runs dry without careful logistics behind it. In your challenges, audit your resources honestly. Time, energy, money, social and emotional capital. Deploy them strategically, never impulsively. Sustainability matters more than intensity over the long run of any battle. Fifth lesson: your reputation is a weapon. The fear the gladiators generated did half their fighting for them. Mayan warriors hesitated before facing them because of what they had heard told. Build a reputation in your field as someone who never gives up, who always delivers, who is not intimidated by impossible odds. That reputation becomes armor and weapon at the same time. Sixth lesson, know when to take the deal. The gladiators could have fought to the death for honor. Instead, they took the gold and left. Recognizing the maximum realistic gain is wisdom. The ego wants total, absolute victory. Wisdom accepts substantial victory and survives to fight another day. The gladiators who know when to retreat are the ones who become legend across the centuries. Seventh lesson, convert your disadvantages into hidden advantages. The gladiators were 100 against 80,000. They turned that into mobility impossible to track. The movement of ghosts the empire could not find. What perceived weakness can you reconfigure as a hidden strength? Small companies are more agile than giant corporations. Individuals pivot faster than institutions. Use your scale as an advantage, never as an excuse. Eighth lesson, control the narrative of your battle. The gladiators made sure their story was told by sending deliberate messages, leaving symbols, and negotiating their own legend before they left. Document your victories. Share your struggles strategically. The story people tell about you is frequently more powerful than the objective facts. Whoever controls the narrative controls the perception. Ninth lesson, fear is a choice, not a permanent condition. The gladiators faced impossible odds daily and chose action over paralysis at every dawn in the jungle. You face your own immense challenges, financial pressure, health crises, professional obstacles, destroyed relationships. The gladiators teach that courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it. 10th lesson, immortality comes from legendary action. These 100 gladiators created something that echoes across centuries. They attempted the impossible with absolute commitment and without any reserve held back. You will not live forever, but you can create an impact that outlives your own life. Accept the impossible challenge. Make the bold attempt. Even if you fail, legendary effort generates legendary stories. Comment which of the 10 lessons speaks most powerfully to your current life situation, because that answer is the map of your next impossible battle waiting to be fought. Here is the deepest truth this story reveals. The gladiators did not really defeat the Mayan army. They defeated the Mayan assumption, and that is always more powerful than defeating the army. The Mayan Empire believed itself unconquerable. The gladiators believed nothing was. That psychological gap between the two beliefs was what determined everything from the very first second of the conflict. The Mayans had superior numbers, local technology, unlimited resources, and terrain advantage, but they fought from a defensive mindset, protecting what they had conquered over the course of centuries. The gladiators fought from an offensive mindset, taking what they wanted without asking permission from anyone. Defense preserves, attack conquers. The gladiators had nothing to lose, and having nothing to lose makes any warrior terrifyingly, absurdly, unexpectedly dangerous to any opponent who cannot imagine that kind of freedom in total combat. That same battle happens in your mind every single day. Your empire mindset says, protect what you have. Do not risk what you have built. Preserve the status quo. Play it safe. Your gladiator mindset says, risk everything. Attempt the impossible. Attack life instead of defending yourself from it. Die gloriously trying instead of living timidly, preserving what you have. Which mindset controls your decisions today? Because that choice determines whether you build an empire that can be brought down by 100 people, or whether you become the legend that brings down the empire. You are facing your own impossible mission right now. Maybe you are one person trying to disrupt an entire industry. Maybe a small team competing against corporations with unlimited resources. Maybe you are fighting a health battle where doctors give you terrible odds. Maybe you are escaping a situation that has trapped your family for entire generations without any visible hope. You are the 100 gladiators. Your challenge is the Mayan Empire. The question is, will you fight like a gladiator? Or will you surrender the way everyone around you expects you to? Here is your battle plan. First, attack immediately. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not prepare forever. The gladiators struck on day one. You strike today. Boldness creates irreversible momentum. Second, fight asymmetrically. Do not compete where the empire is strongest. Find the angle it does not defend. Every system has blind spots. Your job is to find them and exploit them without mercy. Third, capture the emperor. Identify the one thing that, if you control it, flips your entire situation. For the gladiators, it was the king. For you, it might be a skill, a relationship, or a critical decision. Fourth, track your resources ruthlessly. The gladiators counted every arrow. You count every dollar, every hour, every burst of energy. Waste is death when you are at a clear numerical disadvantage. Fifth, build your legend as you advance. Document the journey. Share the battles. Create the narrative of your impossible mission. When you win, the world needs to know the full story of how you got there. Sixth, know when to take the deal. If you reach 80% of your impossible goal, take it and live to fight another day. Perfectionism destroys good enough with frightening frequency. The honest answer about whether 100 gladiators could conquer the Mayan Empire is no, not permanently. They could not govern 2 million people. They could not turn the jungle into Rome. But they could do something possibly greater. They could prove that no empire is invincible. They could expose the myth of unconquerability that keeps entire peoples paralyzed by their own fear of trying. The gladiators did not need to govern the Mayan Empire. They needed to show that it could be done. And in doing so, they changed history more deeply than most emperors ever managed to. Your impossible mission is the same. You may not achieve total permanent victory over your empire-sized challenge, but you can prove that it is not truly impossible for someone who refuses to accept it. You can inspire others facing similar odds. You can become a legend that outlives your own life. And is that not better than playing it safe and never attempting the impossible? Comment now, I am a gladiator. If you are ready to charge against your impossible mission, tell me in the comments which empire you are attacking in your life at this specific moment. The comments section becomes our war council, where gladiators inspire gladiators. If this story awakened the fighter that exists inside you, share it with 3 people facing impossible odds. The gladiators never truly entered the arena alone. Your war band needs to see this now. Subscribe for more wisdom from historical battles applied to the warfare of modern life. Next video, 200 Spartans versus the Persian Empire army of Xerxes. The definitive tactical showdown of discipline against absolute number. Until the next impossible battle that history kept waiting for us. Fight like a gladiator. Think like a gladiator. And if necessary, die like a gladiator trying what everyone said was impossible. Because that is how mortals achieve the immortality they never imagined they deserved. That is how the impossible becomes possible. That is how 100 defeats millions through the pure refusal to accept defeat as the final destiny of those who chose to be extraordinary. The saga continues. Your saga begins now.